Hey everyone, thanks so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Born as a half-dragon with a destiny too heavy to accept, Monkey D. Luffy runs away at just 12 years old and sets sail 5 years earlier than canon to chase her dream of becoming the Queen of the Pirates. With dragon fire in her blood and freedom in her heart, she gathers a much larger crew than expected, turning strangers into family as her journey reshapes the seas ahead of time. But the world isn't her only obstacle. Her powerful elder brothers are hunting her down, determined to drag her back home before she grows strong enough to never return. Adventure, chaos, and loyalty collide as the age of pirates begins far sooner than anyone imagined. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Dragon Queen by TurboDragonQueen. Respect to author.
Chapter 17 Alabasta. It was a quiet morning aboard the Mary, though that was probably because everyone was hungry. Nami looked up from her spot on a lawn chair to see Gracie leaning against the mast with Alvida. Zoro was in the crow's nest, keeping an eye out for Luffy. Kaya and Chopper were checking their medical supplies. Sanji was in the kitchen trying to find anything to cook. The rest of the crew, save Luffy, were either fishing or just lazing about with empty stomachs. What is it, Gracie-chan? Have they caught anything yet? I'll go check, Vivi said as she walked over towards Usopp, Johnny and Yosaku. Have you Gu Karu? She yelled hysterically when she saw Karu being dangled over the ocean by Usopp, Johnny and Yosaku. A minute later, all three men were on the deck with large bumps on their heads from an angry Vivi. Karu is not bait, she yelled. Nami and Gracie watched this with sweat drops. I hope Luffy is having better luck, Gracie said. After they had ran out of food, Luffy had offered to go fishing underwater. After some hesitation, the crew decided to let the girl do it, under the condition that she stay close to the Mary. Kaya and Chopper had thought it'd be a good idea for Luffy to shift into her full dragon form now, before they reached Alabasta. So, Luffy had grabbed a net to put the fish in and dove into the water. That had been about 2 hours ago. Hey, Usopp asked, gaining everyone's attention. What's that? Everyone looked ahead to see a giant cloud of steam. It's steam from underwater volcanoes, Nami said. There are volcanoes underwater too? Chopper asked as he and Kaya came onto the deck. Yes, Nami said. In about 10,000 years from now or so, a new island will form here. Wow, Johnny said. I hope Luffy-chan will be okay. Kaya said. She'll be okay, Alvida said, placing a hand on Kaya's shoulder. Kaya nodded as they sailed through the steam. I can't see anything. Where are you guys? Ow, someone stepped on my foot. Sorry, I can't see. Will everyone stay where they are? By now everyone was complaining, until they sailed through. When they did though, the last thing they expected to see was man dressed as pink ballerina hanging off of Karu. As soon as she saw him, Gracie darted into the ship. Line break. I really thought I was gonna die, the strange man said, before looking at them with a large smile. Thank you so much for saving me. Never thought that complete strangers would rescue me. I'm in your debt. Would it be possible to ask for a bowl of soup? No, we're hungry too, Zoro barked. Then the man looked up at Vivi, who was staring down at him from the upper railings. Oh wow, aren't you a cutie? He said, before receiving a kick in the head by Sanji. Leave Vivi-kwan alone. So you can't swim? Usopp asked. Indeed. You see, I've eaten a devil fruit and can't swim at all. What kind? Nojiko asked. Well, since I'm stuck here until my ship arrives, the man said, before smashing his right palm into Johnny's face, sending him flying. You bastard, Yosaku said as he and everyone else drew their weapons. Then they froze. Well, what do you think? The man asked as everyone found themselves staring at a second Johnny. He's me, Johnny yelled. The man laughed. And if I touch my face with my left hand, he said before tooting his face with said left hand. I turned back to me. Behold the power of the clone fruit. The face and voice, they were an exact match. Usopp gasped. Truth to be told, I didn't need to smack you like that, the man said as he touched everyone's face, save Gracie and Luffy. Now watch, if I touch, my right hand, I can turn into an exact copy of you. Then to the horror of the woman, but to the joy of Sanji, the man flashed them as Nami. The body too. The next thing the man knew, he was planted face first into the deck. When he looked up, he found himself facing 4 angry women. Hey, Jin asked, saving the man from the women's wrath. Is that your ship? It is, the man exclaimed happily. It seems, my friends, that we must part. But fear not everyone, we'll meet again, he said with tears in his eyes, before jumping onto his ship. Let's go everyone. Yes sir, Mr. 2, Bon Clay. There was silence amongst the straw hats as their jaws dropped in horror. Mr. 2, Usopp shouted. That guy was with Baroque Works. Nojiko asked. That was Mr. 2, Vivi yelled. Why didn't you tell us big sis? Johnny and Yosaku yelled. I've never met him before the Mr. 1 pair. She said as she lowered her head. I've heard rumors that he speaks, wears and lives like an Okama. How could you not notice? Half of them yelled. It was then Gracie came back out on the deck. Is he gone? She asked. Where have you been, Gracie-chan? Alvida asked. I'm a traitor, remember? She said. The older members nodded as they remembered. Actually, Zoro said with a grin. It's a good thing we meet him. A sudden splash caused many of them to jump. They turned to see a wet Luffy standing on the deck with a net of fish behind her. Hi guys, she said with a grin. What did I miss? Line break. And remember guys, Zoro said. If you suspect that anyone is lying, have them see you this mark. He untied the rope around his arm to reveal a black X under it. If they don't, then they're Mr. 2. After they had explained what had happened while Luffy was fishing, Zoro had come up with idea in hopes of allowing the crew members to be able to identify if someone was Mr. 2. That's a smart idea, Sanji said as he took a drag of a cigarette. No way Moss Head could think of that. You must be Mr. 2. Don't make me kill you. Zoro barked. It's Zoro, Usopp said in relief. No. Everyone stopped when they heard Luffy cry out below deck. After making the marks on their arms, the women had gone below deck, taking Luffy and Gracie with them. The men looked at each other as Luffy came running onto the deck. She looked slightly angry. Luffy-chan, get back here. Luffy darted behind Zoro, who was the farthest from the cabin, as Vivi walked onto the deck. No. Nami stepped onto the deck behind Vivi. Lu-chan. No. Nami put her hands on her hips. Monkey D. Luffy, get over here now. No. Luffy said with a growl. What's going on? Johnny asked. Don't know. Yosaku replied. Zoro stared at the two women on deck, then glanced at Luffy. Wanna tell me what's going on? He asked. It was Gracie, who was wearing a green summer dress complete with sandals and pigtails, who answered Zoro as she stepped onto the deck. They're trying to get her in a dress. The men glanced at Luffy in sympathy, every man save Sanji. You look very cute, Gracie-chan. He said, then to Luffy. Lu, no, she said again, still hiding behind Zoro. I hate dresses. B.U. If she doesn't want to wear one, Zoro said, crossing his arms. Then she doesn't have to wear one. Nami glared at Zoro, but then sighed. Fine, she said, but then glanced at Luffy. Luffy shuddered at the look on Nami's face that promised that she'd get her in a dress. Hey guys, Jin said from the crow's nest. We're here. Sure enough, when they looked, they saw that they were at the docks of Alabasta. Before they could even finish docking, Luffy, not wanting to be caught by Nami, rocketed off into the town. Luffy, get back here. Nearly half of them shouted, but she was gone. She just can't stay still. Nami sighed. It's Luffy. Zoro said. Guys look. Everyone looked to Vivi, who was pointing to another ship nearby. Gracie recognized it immediately. That's Mr. 3's ship, she cried. Mr. 3, Nami said in surprise. It can only move with the power of the wax fruit. Vivi said as Gracie gulped. She kept staring at the ship, until she felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up to see Usopp. Don't worry, Gracie-chan. He's right, Sanji said. If that weirdo to hurt Gracie-chan, he'll get the ass kicking of his life. He was whacked upside the head by Nami. No swearing in front of Gracie-chan. Gracie giggled as she looked around to see everyone with the same expression on their face. Thanks guys, she said. But what about Luffy-chan? Vivi asked. Nanohana's a big town. Don't worry about Luffy, Zoro said. Just follow the noise and we'll find her. This got a laugh from everyone. That's for sure, Usopp said. Honestly, Nami said, she should be more worried. She's got a bounty on her head that's sure to attract bounty hunters. Bounty hunters that won't care if she's a little girl. Nojiko said. She'll be fine, Zoro said. If anyone tries to take her, they'll have to go through us. Everyone nodded in agreement at that. Now let's go get some supplies, Sanji said, before they split up to find supplies in Luffy. Line break. Marco sighed in relief when he sat down. Ace's nerves had gone beyond fried. They had figured that Ace's sister was somewhere in the Grand Line, and Ace had all but gone white with worry. He hadn't eaten a lot, which was a scary thing for a D. Marco wasn't ready for the man to pass out in hunger, so he had insisted that Ace eat, saying that he couldn't find Luffy if he died from hunger. Ace had given in, and so here they were, in a nice restaurant in Alabasta. Thunk. Marco sighed as he glanced at where Ace was sitting. Yep, his head had taken a dive into his food again, thanks to a narcoleptic attack. He reached over to pull Ace's head out of the food. He's fine, he said to the panicking people inside the restaurant. He just fell asleep. What? Yeah, this happens all the time, so no worries, Marco stated calmly. Anyway, I was wondering if anyone has seen a 12-year-old little girl with black hair, wearing a straw hat. Everyone shook their heads. Marco sighed again, debating on how to wake up Ace so they could continue the search for his sister. Though he was saved from that when Ace woke up and went back to eating. "Well now," said a voice behind them. They turned to see White Chase, Smoker standing behind them. "What are two of Whitebeard's top commanders doing in a town like this?" he asked in a cold tone. "Porgas D, Fire Fist, Ace and Marco the Phoenix." Marco gave the man a sheepish grin, while Ace gave a confident smirk. "Just looking for my runaway little sister," Ace replied. "You two are under our rocket." The next thing everyone knew, there were two gaping holes in the walls. Ace and Smoker were nowhere to be seen and a 12-year-old little girl was standing in their place asking for food. "Did you know who you just sent flying?" the man at the counter asked the girl. "No." Marco was out of his seat and beside the girl grabbing her arm. "You are in a lot of trouble," he said. The girl gave him a confused look, before her eyes widened. The next thing Marco knew, the girl had flipped him over her shoulder, threw him into one of the holes in the wall and into Ace and Smoker. By the time Ace and Marco climbed out of the hole, Ace's little sister and Smoker were nowhere to be found. Line break. It was safe to say that Luffy was in a full-blown panic, as she ran through the streets trying to locate her crew. When that man with a pineapple-shaped head grabbed her arm telling her that she was in a lot of trouble, she had been confused. That is until she caught the scent of Smoker and her older brother, Ace. She had panicked and all but flipped the man over and into the hole where she had sent the two a second ago. To make matters worse, she was being chased by a large group of Marines and Smoker. Oh, did she forget to mention a blue flaming turkey? On top of everything else, her other half was responding to her emotions. She had to force it back so she didn't shift in front of everyone. "Where the hell are they?" she cried. Line break. "Where the hell is Luffy?" Nami cried. After getting the supplies they needed, Luffy's crew had tried to locate the missing 12-year-old. So far, they had found no trace of the girl. Zoro, Sanji, Jin, Johnny, Yosaku and Nami had stayed behind, while everyone else went back to the Mary. They were currently hiding behind some ruins, wearing clothing suitable for Alabasta's hot temperature, as Jin had seen some Marines in the area. "How hard is it to find one?" "Found her," Zoro said, pointing towards town. Everyone followed his finger, to see Luffy running towards them as fast as she could, panic written all over her face. Her eyes were a solid gold. Though it was understandable when they saw what was behind her. The town behind her looked like it was on fire, while chasing the girl was. "What the hell?" Johnny yelled. "That bird is on fire." Yosaku yelled. Everyone else gaped in shock. Though Sanji and Zoro ran forward when they noticed that the pesky giant flaming turkey was about to grab their captain. Luffy dove in between the two just as her cook's leg and Zoro's blade came in contact with the flaming chicken's feet. The bird seemed to scowl in annoyance before it changed into a man with blonde hair. Luffy's eyes widened as she recognized him as the man from earlier. Said man looked none too pleased that they got in the way. Zoro, Johnny and Yosaku's eyes widened at the sight of the tattoo on the man's chest. But then to make matters worse, they found themselves surrounded by what had to be at least 1 billion bounty hunters. The present Straw Hat men formed a protective circle around Luffy and Nami, who was trying to calm down the panicking girl, whose entire form was shaking. The blonde-haired man looked at the bounty hunters angrily, though it was hard to tell with the man's bored expression. "Stop right there, Marco the Phoenix," one man said. "You've got no place to run." Another said, "If we turn your head in, we'll get a major promotion." "Lu Chan, you need to calm down," Nami whispered to the girl, as she rubbed the girl's back soothingly. Zoro glanced at his young captain, scales covered her neck and arms. He gritted his teeth. If they didn't do something, the girl would likely lose control. The last thing they needed was to deal with a panicky dragon. He shot a quick glance at Sanji and Jin, who nodded. "Get ready," Zoro ordered the other Straw Hats, as he placed his treasured sword in his mouth. But before they could do anything, the blonde man, Marco, held up his hand, stopping them. Marco glanced at Luffy, worry written on his face, before he looked at Zoro. "Go," Marco said. "I'll hold them off." Zoro looked at the man for a moment, before he sheathed 2 of his blades. Taking his treasured sword in one hand, he turned to pick up Luffy with his other hand. Luffy clung to her first mate's shirt, taking in Zoro's scent. "Let's go," Zoro said. Line break. On board the Mary, the rest of Straw Hats were waiting for Zoro and the others to come back with Luffy. They weren't expecting to see the other crew members all but sprinting towards the ship, with Zoro carrying Luffy. "What happened?" Alvida asked. Later, Zoro said, "We need to get out of here." As everyone rushed about, getting Mary away from the docks, Zoro glanced at Luffy, who had yet to let go of his shirt. The scales had vanished, but the girl was still shaking. He sighed as he placed her onto the deck. Luffy stiffened for a moment, before she released her hold on his shirt. "Luffy-chan." Kaya and Chopper rushed over to the girl, having noticed the shaking. "Are you okay?" Luffy nodded. "I'm okay, Kaya-ne, Chopper-ni." But with her brother looking for her, Luffy wasn't sure for how long. Line break. "Okay," Alvida asked once they were heading down the Sandora River. Would someone be so kind as to tell the rest of us what happened back at Nanohana? We don't know, Johnny said. All we know that Lil Sis was being chased by a Whitebeard commander. Yosaku said. What? Shouted most of the crew, save Chopper, Kaya and Gracie. Who's Whitebeard? Chopper asked. Whitebeard is a famous pirate in the Grand Line. He's known as the ruler of the seas. Alvita said. I've heard that he's stronger than the 7 warlords. Jin said. It's not really surprising, since he's a Yonko. Sanji said. It's well known that he doesn't take too kindly to those who messes with anyone under his protection or his crew. Luffy-chan, Kaya asked. Everyone looked to Luffy, who was close to tears. Do you know why Whitebeard is after you? He might be a friend of my older brother Ace. Zoro, Jin, Sanji, Johnny, Yosaku, and Alvita nearly choked at that name. Why you mean Porgas d'Ace? The 2nd Division commander of Whitebeard's crew. Jin asked in disbelief. Luffy looked at her feet as she nodded. I didn't know that he was with Whitebeard's crew. Last I heard from Ace Knee, he was the captain of the Spade Pirates. Luffy said. Ace Knee must have found out that I ran away. Everyone sighed as they remembered that their captain was a 12-year-old on the run, from her own family apparently. Zoro then noticed the look on the girl's face. Is there anything else we should know? He asked her. Luffy hesitated, before nodding. I have 2 other older brothers, their names are Law Ni and Sabo Ni. Wait, you mean, the Blue Gentleman, Sabo, captain of the Top Hat Pirates, and Trafalgar Law, the captain of the Heart Pirates? Luffy nodded. I don't believe it, Zoro thought. Her grandfather is Garp the Fist, her uncle is Mihawk, and her brothers are pirates. Next you'll tell us that your father is Gold Roger. Usopp called out exasperatedly. Luffy bit her lip and looked away. Don't tell me, thought the crew. Lil Sis, Johnny croaked out. Your father is Gold Roger. Yosaku croaked out. Luffy shook her head. He's my uncle. What? The entire crew shouted, causing Luffy to flinch at the volume. So let me get this straight, Zoro said. Your grandfather is Garp the Fist, your uncles are Mihawk and Gold Roger, and your brothers are Fire Fist Ace, Blue Gentleman Sabo and Trafalgar Law. Luffy nodded to each name, while everyone grew paler and paler. While most knew about Mihawk being her uncle, none save Zoro knew that their captain was the granddaughter of the marine hero Garp. Anyone else we should know about? My father is Monkey D. Dragon. Everyone's jaws just about crashed through Mary's deck. I'm sorry, I should have told you guys this earlier. If you all want to leave, I won't hold it against you. I don't want anyone to get hurt because me. Luffy stated as she gave a big smile. But they all could see right through it, they could easily see that the girl was close to tears. Luffy, Zoro growled as he and the others turned to the girl. How could you tell us something like that? Luffy stared at Zoro, stunned. She hadn't been expecting that. She certainly wasn't expecting to get hugged by Nami and Gracie. We're all friends, right, Luffy? Gracie asked. Were you crew? Nami said as everyone else nodded. You brought us all together here. And you promised to help us fulfill our dreams. Kaya said, giving the girl a warm smile. Just like we promised to help you fulfill yours. Nojiko said. We don't care who your parents are. Alvita said. We're not going to abandon you, Lil Sis. Johnny said as Yosaku nodded in agreement. You're not alone, Luffy-chan. Sanji said. None of us are gonna let that happen. Jin said. And if anyone tries to take you from us, well, they have another thing coming. Luffy stared at everyone in shock, before the tears began to fall. She buried her face into Nami's shoulder as she began to cry. They weren't going to leave her alone, they were going to stick by her. They were her family, just like her brothers, Makino, Dayton and the others. Everyone smiled at the little girl, who they called Captain and Little Sister. They weren't about to let anyone take her. After all, they were the crew of the future Pirate Queen. End chapter. Chapter 18, Journey to Rainbase and Crocodile. It had been some time since Luffy had revealed who was in her family to her crew. Usopp, Chopper, Johnny and Yosaku thought it was awesome that their captain was the niece of the late Pirate King. But the other members of the crew knew that if word got out that their captain was the daughter of the most wanted man in the world and the niece of Gold Roger, they'd have more than just bounty hunters after them. However, everyone was currently groaning about the heat as they walked through the desert. I hate the desert, Usopp groaned. I'm gonna die. Not before me, Chopper replied unenergetically as Zoro pulled him across the desert on a sled. The reindeer-human hybrid was only semi-conscious, having been reduced to a sizzling ball of fur. Chopper could barely even walk in the desert heat. At least Chopper and Luffy-chan have an excuse, Sanji grumbled. You're just being melodramatic, Usopp. It was true, like Chopper, Luffy, who was being carried by Jin, was only semi-conscious. The young dragon was not at all used to such heat. She couldn't even lower temperature enough to be comfortable. It was one of the few times she hated her rubber skin. It was good at keeping out the cold, but not the heat. Usopp wanted to argue, but a quick glance from Kaya made him change his mind. Will you stop complaining? Nami reprimanded. All you're doing is wasting energy that you should be using for walking. She's right, Nojiko said. If you keep it up, you're just going to need more water, and that's something we can spare right now. Sanji had to agree. Many of them weren't faring all too well in this heat. Chopper and Luffy were immobile. Nami and the other ladies refused to let him carry at least one of them. Usopp was, well, Usopp, he, Johnny and Yosaku were sweating heavily. Zoro was toughing it out. The only ones who seemed to be somewhat okay were Vivi, Gracie, and Jin. You three don't seem to be bothered by this heat. Alvida commented as she fanned her face. I was born and raised on this island, so I'm used to it. Vivi said, this isn't the first time I've been to Alabasta. Gracie said, I used to be crewmates with someone who could set himself on fire. Was Jin's response. Oh, I guess that makes sense. Nami said, I still can't believe that Lil Sis is the daughter of the revolutionary dragon. Johnny said, trying to take his mind off the heat. Or that she's the niece of Gul D. Roger. Yosaku said, I'm surprised that she's Garp the Fist's granddaughter. Usopp said, you really shouldn't say that out loud. Alvida said, she's right. Nojiko said, who's going to hear us? Usopp asked, we're in the middle of nowhere. You should never just assume that. Zoro said as he continued to pull Chopper. But, Usopp went to say, before being interrupted by Jin. Chopper, Kaya, get over here. Everyone looked to see Jin crouching over Luffy, trying to shield the girl from the sun. The young girl's face was red and her breathing appeared to be shallow. Kaya and Chopper were immediately by Jin's side. What's wrong? Alvida asked, as they crowded around their doctor and nurse. She's getting heat stroke. Chopper cried. We need to get her out of the sun now. Kaya said. Over there. Vivi said, pointing to a large rock formation that they could use for shade. They wasted no time in getting their captain over to the shade. Everyone stayed to the side as Chopper and Kaya worked to lower the girl's temperature. Will she be okay? Gracie asked. Chopper nodded. She should be okay in about an hour. Vivi glanced at the sun. It should be getting dark soon. Okay, Zoro said. We're going to stay here for the night. Everyone nodded and made themselves as comfortable they could in the shade. Chopper and Kaya stayed by Luffy's side for the remaining of the evening. Line break. The last thing anyone expected to happen the next morning was to wake up to a sandstorm. Sandstorms are another danger in the desert. Vivi shouted over the wind. Tell us this sooner. Nearly half of them shouted as they braced themselves. Chopper changed into his human point to shield Kaya and Luffy from the sand, while Jin did the same to Gracie. The sandstorm blew around them for a while before gradually dying down. Blee, Johnny said as he and the dug themselves out of the sand. I got sand in my mouth. Yosaku said. Talk about a wake-up call. Zoro groaned. What happened? Luffy asked as she sat up. How are you feeling, Luffy-chan? Kaya asked as Chopper checked Luffy for any signs of the heat stroke. I'm feeling better than yesterday. Luffy said as Chopper finished. The heat stroke is gone. He said. Everyone sighed in relief. Alright, we should keep moving. Vivi said, as everyone packed up their things. Are you sure you'll be okay, Lu-chan? Alvida asked, as they set out again. Luffy nodded. I'll be okay, Alvida nay. You shouldn't overexert yourself, Luffy-chan. Kaya said. But Luffy assured them that she could handle the heat better than she could yesterday. Line break. It had been an hour since they started walking through the desert again, and true to her words, Luffy seemed to be doing a little better in the heat. Luffy had been traveling ahead of her crew, when she suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her eyes flashed gold as she stared at the sand in front of her. What's wrong, Luffy? Zoro called out. Hey, Vivi nay. Luffy called back. Yes, Luffy-chan. Are there any large purple lizards in the desert? Yes, Vivi said, confused. There are Sandoran lizards. They are very giant lizards that hide under the sand. They are very vicious and known to travel in pairs. Why do you ask? Luffy gave a large grin that showed her canines, just as said giant lizard rose up out of the sand ahead of her. Found one, Luffy said in a sing-song voice. Before anyone could stop her, Luffy had jumped very high into the air. Gum gum, Luffy shouted as the Sandoran lizard lunged for the girl, intending on swallowing her whole, but Luffy wasn't going to get eaten anytime soon. Pistol. Nearly everyone gasped as their 12-year-old captain caught a lizard that easily dwarfed her in size with one punch. No way. Vivi cried out in shock. She took it out with one hit. A sudden thought occurred to Nami. Vivi. Yes, Nami. You said that those things travel in pairs, right? Yes. Vivi never got to finish, when another Sandoran lizard appeared behind them, chasing a camel. Looks like we've got lunch and dinner right here. Sanji said. Need a hand, curly brow. Zoro said with a blade in hand. Like I need any help from you, Moss head. Sanji yelled. Do you two need to fight now? Jin asked with his tonfa in hand. Tatsu. Epoule. Topang. Asterisk. Maki, shoot Mogok. All three men shouted as they attacked at once, defeating the giant lizard with ease. Everyone, save Luffy, gasped at them as the lizard fell down dead. That was a little overkill, guys. Usopp said. Way to go, Lil Sis. Way to go, big bros. Johnny and Yosaku cheered. So cool. Chopper and Gracie said. Chopper had stars in his eyes. I feel bad for whoever those four gang up on, Nami said, as the others nodded. Yay. Luffy cheered. Meet. Line break. Hey Vivi nay. There's a city ahead, Luffy said, after the sandstorm had died down. Is that Yuba? Yes, Vivi said, but as they got closer, what they saw was not good. The whole city was deserted, covered in sand. This is Yuba? Usopp asked. Yes, but now, it's dried up like the rest of Alabasta, Vivi said as she looked around the city that was once home to many. Suddenly Luffy darted away from the group. Luffy. But Luffy paid no mind to her friends, she was more focused on following the sound she heard. It sounded like someone was digging. She came to a large hole in the sand where a withered man was digging away at the bottom. Hello mister. The man jumped in surprise, he turned to see Luffy staring down at him. My goodness child, the man said in a raspy voice. You startled me, sorry. Luffy where are you? I'm over here Nami ne. It didn't take long for Luffy's crew to locate their captain. Well hello there, the old man said. You must be travelers. Sorry, but the town's a little dry at the moment, so I'm afraid that we can't offer you much. However, there are plenty of inns that you can stay in to rest. Thank you for the offer, Vivi said after covering her face. But we came to speak with the rebel army. The man's face went from kind to anger. If you want to see the rebels, then get lost, he said as he started chucking various objects at them. They aren't here anyway. They packed up and left for Cateria. They what? Everyone yelled while Luffy covered her ears. Cateria, Vivi said in horror. That's bad, said Gracie. Why? Jin asked. Where is it? Is it nearby Big Sis Vivi? Johnny asked. It's near Nanohana, all the way back where we started. You gotta be kidding, you mean we traveled all this way for nothing? Jin yelled, as the perverted camel, Eyelash, they had saved from those Sandoran lizards started speaking. He says that he remembers going to Cateria to deliver supplies to the rebels. Chopper translated. Nearly half of the crew ended up beating the shit out of the camel. So what do we do now? Luffy asked. While she didn't really care if they had to walk all the way back, she knew it was only a matter of time till Ace found her again. Then she noticed that the old man had stopped digging, instead he was staring at Vivi. Vivi, the man looked close to tears as he grabbed her shoulders. It is you, don't you recognize me? I know I've lost a bit of weight. Vivi stared at the man for a moment before her eyes widened. Toto, it's me, he said. Then Toto began to say that he still believed in Vivi and her father, the king. And that the king truly did care for his people and would never betray them. This rebellion is absurd. No matter how many times I tried, I couldn't stop those faithless fools. They're planning to end this with one full-out assault, they're prepared to die. Vivi looked horrified, as he begged her to stop them. But then she gave him a smile. Don't worry, Toto-san. I'll stop them. Toto began to cry in hope at her words, before Vivi turned to everyone. We'll stay here for the night. Then in the morning, we'll head to Cateria. Everyone nodded before settling down in one of the inns. Line break. Alright everyone, Usopp said out loud. Good work to you all. Now, it's time for some well-deserved. He didn't get finished before a pillow smacked into the back of his head. You've been sleeping all day. Zoro yelled. Jerk. Usopp as he threw a pillow at him. I'm not a monster like you. You're dead, Zoro said as Usopp threw a pillow at Chopper. And the grand prize for the laziest person goes to you, Blue Nose. I can't handle this heat. Chopper yelled as he threw a pillow back at him. What do you think you're doing? Usopp asked Chopper, who was giggling. Sanji-san, Vivi said. That's my bunk. Well, I thought you'd be a little lonely too, he said before a pillow was thrown onto his face. Which one of you threw that at me? Sanji demanded. Arrow Cook. Kaya couldn't help but laugh at her crewmates. She kept laughing until she was hit by a pillow. She looked over to see Gracie giving her an evil grin. What was that for? Kaya said, giving the younger girl a smile before she threw a pillow at her, causing the girl to laugh. Would you all shut up? I'm trying to sleep. Jin yelled before Nojiko threw a pillow at him. Then go to sleep, she said, before ducking as he threw it back. The pillow sailed over her head and smacked Johnny, who then fell into Yosaku. Hey, the two yelled as Yosaku threw it back, only to hit Alvida. Quit it, she said. In a matter of seconds, a massive pillow fight broke out between the Straw Hats. Nami yelled at them to stop, before one hit her, causing her to lose. She grabbed the pillow and jumped into the fray. Vivi couldn't stop the smile on her face as she watched her friends. Line break. Luffy laughed as she listened to the sounds of her laughing nakama. She was currently sitting on the roof of the inn in her partial form, her sapphire scales glimmered in the moonlight. Her golden-tinted brown eyes stared up at the stars in the sky above. The stars seemed to dance across the night sky. She had snuck out of the inn when the first pillow was thrown. It wasn't that she didn't want to play with them as well, it's just that she had a lot on her mind. Her thoughts drifted to her brother, Ace. She knew he was still looking for her and knew that when he did, she'd have to tell him the truth on why she ran away. That is if he'd give her time to explain and didn't try to harm her nakama first. Then her thoughts drifted towards Vivi. Vivi was trying so hard to be brave and strong for her people. Luffy knew that if they failed to stop Crocodile and the rebellion, Vivi might sacrifice herself in order to save her kingdom. But Luffy also knew that Vivi's plan on stopping the rebellion before anyone else gets hurt was never going to work. The sound of a shovel digging in the sand knocked Luffy from her thoughts. She looked down from the roof to see Toto digging in the sand again. She jumped off the roof to land a few feet away. "What are you digging for?" she asked as she walked up to him. Toto glanced up to see the little girl staring down at him. His eyes widened when he saw her wings, tail, and sapphire scales. "My dear child, are you a dragon?" he asked. She nodded. "I've heard rumors of beings such as yourself, but I've never really believed them," he said. "You're not scared of me?" she asked. "My dear girl," Toto said with a kind smile. "I find it an honor that you've even allowed me to see you in this form." Luffy smiled. "So what are digging for?" "I'm digging for water. But I thought this place was dried up." "The water will come," Toto said as he went back to digging. "Yuba will never be beaten by mere sand. The king left this land to me. I'll dig the sand out as many times as I have to." Luffy smiled before she asked if she could help. "I don't see why not." Toto gasped when the girl shifted from her partial form to her full dragon form. "Beautiful," he said in awe. He heard the girl laugh in his head. Luffy moved a little bit away from the hole Toto had dug, before using her claws as shovels to move the sand. Thanks to her dragon form, she was able to dig a decent dragon-sized hole. She continued to dig until the scent of damp sand reached her nose. "I think I'm close to the water." "Amazing," Toto said, before Luffy stopped. "I found water," Luffy said as she shifted into her human form. When Toto looked sewn into the hole, he could not stop the tears from falling at the sight of the water up to the girl's waist. "Simply amazing," Toto said as Luffy jumped out of the hole. "The princess is very lucky to have found such kind-hearted friends like you." Luffy gave the man a kind smile, before she let out a big yawn. Toto couldn't help but chuckle at this. He was about to pick her up, when Zoro, who'd been awake the whole time, did it for him. "Time for bed, Captain," Zoro said as Luffy fell asleep. Zoro gave Toto a nod, before heading back into the inn. Line break. Morning came and everyone was packed and ready to go. "I wish you good luck on your journey, Princess Vivi," Toto said. "I'm sorry I can't offer any more help." "Don't worry, Toto-san," Vivi said. "You've done more than enough. Thank you. Oh, before I forget," he said as he walked towards Luffy. He pulled a small barrel of water from under his robes. "This is for you, child." "Thank you," Luffy said in joy. "And I have a whole barrel full for your entire group as well," he said as he walked towards another barrel. "Genuine Yuba water. It's my way of thanking you for helping me out last night." "No sweat, mister," Luffy said with a grin. "We'll drink it wisely. Take care, my friends," Toto said as they all started walking. They had been walking for a few minutes, when Luffy suddenly flopped down against a dead tree and sat there. "What are you doing, Luffy-chan?" Usopp asked, gaining everyone's attention. "What's wrong, lil sis?" Yosaku asked. "I quit." "Huh, quit what?" Vivi asked in confusion. "We gotta keep moving," Usopp said. "Aren't we in a hurry?" Chopper asked. "We are," Sanji said. "We need to get back to Cateria or a million Alabasta citizens are going to start killing each other." "Come on, Luffy-chan." He reached to pick her up, only to stop when Luffy shot him a look. "Vivi," Luffy said in a low serious tone, that stunned many of her crewmates. As she looked at her, her eyes were tinted. "Yes, Luffy-chan," Vivi asked in worry. "There's only one thing I wanna do," Luffy said, never taking her eyes off Vivi's. "And that's to kick Crocodile's ass." Everyone was shocked. Kaya didn't even reprimand the girl for her language. But Luffy wasn't done. "Even if we stop the rebels, Crocodile won't stop. Even if we go to Cateria, nothing will change. We're pirates. Nothing good happens when we're around. But we need to get to Cateria, so we see. So you can end all of this without anyone dying, right?" Luffy said. "You'll never win that way." Vivi took a step towards the girl. She was shaking from head to foot, her face contorted with rage. "And what's wrong with that?" Vivi shouted. "What's so wrong with not wanting people to die or get hurt?" Luffy looked at her and said coldly, "Because people die, that's why." Slap. Everyone stared at Vivi, who still had her hand raised, who was glaring down at Luffy, who was knocked to the ground. The girl's cheek where Vivi had slapped her was turning red. "Say that again and I will really hurt you," Vivi screamed. "That's the whole point on why we're here. Don't you understand? No one here in Alabasta, not the rebels, not the royal army, not any of the citizens are to blame for this. Why should they have to suffer for what Crocodile's done?" The 12-year-old responded by jumping to her feet and punching Vivi, knocking her to the ground. "So it's only okay for you to die?" Luffy roared. "Lil sis, big sis," Johnny and Yosaku shouted as everyone stared in shock. Before anyone could stop her, Vivi had tackled Luffy to the ground, before she began to punch her over and over again. Some of the crew members rushed forward to stop Vivi, but stopped when Luffy spoke again. "Looking around in just one day in this country, and even I can tell." "Tell what?" Vivi demanded. "What this country needs. You think that putting your life on the line is enough to stop this from happening?" Luffy asked calmly, even as Vivi kept hitting her. "Then what should I put on the line, Luffy?" Vivi asked. "All I have to put on the line is my life. That's all." The next thing Vivi knew was that she was on the ground once again, staring up in shock at Luffy. "How about our lives then?" Luffy demanded. We're your friends, remember? Vivi could only stare at the little girl in front of her as tears welled up in her eyes. Did you forget we're your friends, Vivi Nay? Luffy asked in a gentle tone. As soon as Luffy called her big sister, Vivi broke down completely and sobbed. You hate all that's happening here, so you want to get Crocodile the most. Luffy said in the same tone as before, as Nami and Kaya hugged Vivi as she cried. Everyone else watched as Vivi, the princess who loved a country that was killing itself, cried her eyes out, as Luffy stood up. Now tell me, Vivi Nay, where's Crocodile? Line break. Ace was really wondering if the world hated him. He and Marco had finally managed to find his runaway little sister, only to lose her again thanks to that damn marine captain. While Ace had been dealing with Smoker, Marco had gone off to find Luffy. He did, only to be forced into letting the girl's crew take her so Luffy wouldn't shift into her full dragon form. That had been 2 days ago and so far there was no trace of his sister or her crew. Whitebeard had his commanders at every city in Alabasta in hopes of finding the girl. They really couldn't do much else, since Alabasta was home to a warlord. Marco had brought up the suggestion that Luffy had left Alabasta, but something told Ace that his sister was still here. Currently Ace and Thatch, who had finally been allowed to leave the ship, were in Rainbase. Ace didn't really know why he had agreed to go to Rainbase when he wanted to search for his sister, he just felt like he needed to be here. Though as to why he was in a casino which had a crocodile on top of its roof he blamed Thatch. He and Thatch were sitting at one of the many bars inside. Remind me why we're in a casino, again. Ace asked his friend with the pompadour. You need to relax a little, Ace. Thatch said. I know you're worried about your sister, we all are, but you're going to make yourself sick if you keep running around like you have been. Besides, Oyaji's got everyone on board looking for her. Ace sighed. Sorry, it's just I can help but worry. Thatch placed a hand on his shoulder. I understand, Ace. I just can't understand why she ran away to begin with. Ace said. We had made a promise to set sail when we turned 17. And I know for a fact that my sister wouldn't break a promise unless she had no other choice. She's not someone who does things without a reason. Now that he'd seen his sister and if what Marco had told him was in the hands of people who could keep her safe, he still needed to confirm that himself. Ace had begun to look over any possible reason on why Luffy would set sail 5 years early. Yesterday, everyone had watched in amusement as Ace began another scene of spitting fire, literally, in anger and a new string of swear words. I'm going to kill that old geezer. Ace had stated simply, after he figured out that his idiotic grandfather must have done something stupid enough for Luffy to leave in an attempt to honor at least one of the promises she had made. If that blasted idiot hadn't tried to do whatever had caused their current predicament which involved the reckless 12-year-old, then they wouldn't be in this mess right now. I'm still gonna kill that damn geezer. Ace growled. Thatch laughed at that, knowing that Ace would back up that statement. I'm sure that most of us will help you with that, Thatch said. But let's locate your sister first, okay? And how am I supposed to do that from here? Ace demanded hotly. It's not like my sister has any reason to come into a casino. Alright, Crocodile. Where are you? The look on Ace's face when he saw his sister and what must have been her crew standing near the entrance to the casino was quite comical. Thatch would have been laughing, if it wasn't for the fact that he had a somewhat similar expression on his face. Luffy-chan, said an orange-haired woman. He's not going to come out just because you're yelling for him. Ace's sister pouted. Nami nay, how else am I supposed to find him? You won't get away, Straw Hat. A familiar voice bellowed from outside. Crap, said the man with a long nose. It's Smoker. Run, shouted the woman with short blue hair. Ace's sister and her friends started running farther into the casino. Security guards were flung around the room. Before some dressed-up casino workers offering them a welcome to a VIP room. Ace and Thatch wasted no time in following the group. Luffy, Ace shouted. Ace, Luffy cried out in surprise, before the floor below them opened up. Going do WWN, shouted Long Nose. How'd we fall for this? Said the green-haired swordsman. Luffy, Ace yelled as they fell. You were in so much trouble. Line break. Now Luffy was well aware that those, welcoming, casino workers were leading them into a trap. However, she hadn't known that she'd run into her brother again. Nor that they'd wind up in a cage underneath the casino. It took everything she had, to not fully shift as soon as she saw the bars. She couldn't help but flash back to her time on board that slave ship. Where are we? Yosaku asked. A cage, Alvida said in a bored tone as she leaned against the bars, only to have Johnny catch her as she slumped. Why do I feel so weak? She asked. Luffy, Zoro said in warning. Luffy spun around in time to see Smoker aim his jute at her. However, before he could reach her, he was sent flying into the back wall by a flaming fist. Don't you dare lay a hand on my sister. Ace said calmly as he stood in between Luffy and Smoker. Ace knee, Luffy said. Ace glanced back at his sister, he noted that she seemed extremely uncomfortable. You okay, Lou? Luffy's eyes flashed gold before turning brown again. I'm okay, Ace knee. Thatch decided to speak up. I take it you're a fruit user. He asked Alvida. She nodded. The reason you're weak is probably because these bars are made of sea prism stone. Sea prism acts like the sea in solid form. So that's why I felt weak. Yes, said Smoker. It's the reason why I haven't escaped. If I could, you'd all be dead. Zoro flicked a blade out at Smoker's threat, while flames appeared on Ace's shoulders. I don't care if you're made of smoke. I will fry you to a crisp if you touch my sister. Alright Ace, calm down, Thatch said. This isn't the time. He's right Zoro, this is no time to fight. Nojiko said. They're right, came a mocking voice from outside the cage. You're all going to die together, so why not make an effort to get along first? All of them turned to see a man sitting in a large chair. The man was quite tall with a wide chest, broad shoulders, and a thick neck. He had nape-length, deep black-purple hair, with a long scar stitched across his face above his nose. And at the end of his left arm, replacing his hand was a large golden hook. Crocodile. Smoker growled. TT, that's him. Longnose stuttered as he and the orange-haired woman stared in horror. So he's the warlord, huh? Zoro asked. Crocodile. Gracie mumbled in fear as she tried to hide behind Yosaku. As soon as Smoker had identified the man as Crocodile, Luffy had forgotten about her fierce dislike of cages. Crocodile. She growled, eyes flashing. Let me out of here so I can kick your ass. Every bit of scum that I knew you were. Smoker growled. Ah, Captain Smoker. Every bit of the wild dog I've heard you were. Unlike your superiors, you've never trusted me. Looks like you're right, Crocodile said as he walked towards them a little. Oh, don't worry, I'll give a report the Marines that you died in a struggle against Straw Hat Luffy here. Crocodile eyed Luffy for a moment before his gaze landed on Gracie. Well, this is a surprise, Miss Goldenweek. I never expected to see an agent of mine defect. Guess that means that you'll have to die. I'm not letting you lay a hand on my friends. Luffy growled. Stop it, Luffy-chan. You make him angry. Usopp begged. Straw Hat Luffy. Crocodile said. I must admit that I never expected that the captain of the Straw Hats was a child. Congratulations on getting this far. I assure you that your demise will be done cleanly and efficiently once our guest of honor arrives. Guest of honor? Nami asked. My partner has gone to retrieve her at this very moment. Then Crocodile turned his attention to Ace and Thatch. Well, I never expected that I'd host two of Whitebeard's commanders. I suppose since his 2nd and 4th Division commanders are here, then that means he's here as well. If so, then I can take his head after I've dealt with you. Line break. Sanji knee impression, Luffy said as she acted like she was smoking. Who ate all the meat? Usopp, Johnny and Yosaku were cracking up before Nami whacked them upside their heads. Enough, she yelled, before slamming her fist on a sleeping Zoro's head. And you wake up. Morning already. It's the afternoon, Nami yelled. Calm down Nami, Nojiko said. We can't really do much right now, so try to relax. How can you all be so calm? Nami asked her sister. As her crew bickered, Luffy was sitting as far away as she could from the bars. It was only because of the close proximity with her friends, brother and Smoker, that she did not shift. Though it was becoming harder with each passing second. Her body shook with small tremors as she forced back her other half. The tremors did not go unnoticed by her brother or Zoro. Ace was becoming extremely worried for his sister, while Luffy had never liked being caged to be with. Her reaction to being in a cage now seemed to be far worse now than it had been. He didn't miss the worried look that the green-haired man, Zoro, directed towards his sister. He was starting to believe that something else happened to his sister on Dawn. He was knocked from his thoughts when Crocodile spoke. Someone's in high spirits. Nami shot the man a withering glare. Just you wait. The moment we're out of this cage, Luffy-chan is going to kick your ass. Ace and Thatch blanched at the thought of Luffy taking on a warlord. No, you got that right, Luffy growled, interrupting her brother. Now open up this cage already. I'm a little surprised that your crew seems to have a lot of faith in you, child. Crocodile said. Trust. Such a useless feeling. What did you say? Nami snarled, sounding almost like Luffy for a moment. Quit it, Usopp said. Don't make him mad. Suddenly Luffy's head shot towards the door when the scent of sand and perfume reached her nose. She also caught the familiar scent of flowers and stone. Crocodile. Everyone looked to see Vivi and Miss All Sunday on the stairs. Vivi nay, Luffy shouted. Welcome Miss Wednesday, or should I call you Princess Vivi of Alabasta? Crocodile said mockingly. Ace was trying to figure out why his sister was friends with a princess. I must say I'm impressed that you avoided our assassins. Crocodile continued. I'd do anything and go anywhere to stop you, Mr. Zero. She said venomously, before charging him. If not for you, Alabasta would be at peace. Vivi roared as she attacked him, cutting off his head. Luffy's eyes widened. Vivi nay, behind you. But it was too late. Crocodile appeared behind the princess, his body forming out of sand. Crocodile placed his hand over Vivi's mouth as he spoke. Feel better? He asked. As a native from this country, you should be aware that I possess the power of the sand fruit. Shall I make you into a mummy? Luffy launched herself at the bars, surprising many when the bars bent ever so slightly. Get your hands off of Vivi nay, Luffy growled, her eyes a solid gold. The look in her eyes sent shivers down everyone's spine, and there was no missing the presence that now filled the air. To Thatch and Ace it felt like the will of the king, but this felt more dangerous. Even Crocodile could not ignore the feeling of fear that he felt right then. Zoro was besides the young girl immediately. He placed a hand on her shoulder, which seemed to calm her down somewhat as the presence vanished. Though her eyes still held a hint of gold. Crocodile stared at the girl, his eyes calculating something. But then he smirked. He released Vivi into a nearby chair. Make yourself comfortable, for the party is about to start. Right, Miss All Sunday. Party? Nami asked. It's noon. Operation Utopia has begun. Miss All Sunday said. Crocodile started to laugh like a madman. What's so funny? Johnny asked. What's Operation Utopia? Yosaku asked. Simple. Crocodile said as he stopped laughing. It's the end for the kingdom of Alabasta. This city is going to be wiped off of the map and plunge its people into eternal despair. If you're planning on killing my father, Vivi shouted. You'll be dead before you can reach him. Oh, don't worry, he said. I have no interest in killing him. Rather, I plan on having him experience something far worse than death. What could be worse than death? Crocodile grinned as he began to tell them everything. He told them that his agents had kidnapped the king, and Mr. 2 would use his powers to attack the people of Nanohana as the king, spurring the rebels to move into a final assault on the palace. Everyone was now glaring, or in Luffy's case growling, at Crocodile in horror anger as he began to laugh. Asshole! Nojiko shouted. I am so going to kick your ass. Luffy growled. I can assure you, Thatch, who'd been silent for the whole time, said. Oyaji will never allow that to happen. Ace nodded his head in agreement. Vivi snapped. She tipped her chair over and tried to crawl away. Where are you running off to? Crocodile asked. To stop you, Vivi said. If I can reach Alubarna, before the rebel army, I can stop them. Crocodile just chuckled. It just so happens that we're heading to Alubarna as well. You can come if you wish, or you can stay here and save them. Crocodile grinned as he held up a small key. A key to this cage. Johnny said. Hand it over, you jerk. Yosaku said. But then they all watched as Crocodile dropped the key to the floor, which then fell through a trap door that opened up. By this time Luffy was leaning heavily against Zoro, her fear of being trapped coming back full force. If she could have, she would have shifted, but didn't dare for fear of hurting her friends and brother. Said people were shooting worried glances at her. Ace watched as Zoro placed a hand on his sister's shoulder. For some reason he couldn't help but be jealous when the gesture seemed to calm her down. Usually, Luffy went to either him or their other brothers. He was really beginning to feel that something else had happened on Dawn, and something told him that Luffy had told Zoro what it was. When this was over, he'd have her tell him exactly what happened. Suddenly his attention was brought back when she cried out. What happened? Alvida asked. One of the banana gators swallowed the key. My apologies. I seem to have misplaced the key. There's no telling which one swallowed it, he said in amusement as he walked towards the door. If only I could cut through the bars. Zoro thought as he gritted his teeth. He glanced at Luffy again. She had yet to move from his side, though after what she had told him after she told him part of her past, it was not surprising that the 12-year-old half-dragon had chosen to seek him for comfort. It's time we're off, Crocodile said before he snapped his fingers, causing a door to open. In 1 hour, this room would be filled up with water. So you have a choice, Miss Wednesday. A million of people or a handful of pirates with no future. Everyone shot him with dirty looks when he said that this country was filled with idiots who made his job way too easy. Then he started to mention Todo and Yuba and how he would try and keep a dead Oasis alive no matter what happened. Then he looked to Luffy, who growled. Tell me, child, do you think that sandstorms hitting the same spot over and over is natural? What do you mean? Vivi asked. Could he have? Nami asked. They all watched as Crocodile turned his hand into a small sandstorm. Luffy's eyes widened in understanding. That was your doing, she roared. So, he's the reason why every city in Alabasta is dried up. Alvida asked, as Vivi glared at him with nothing but hatred. I'll kill you, Vivi growled. But as Crocodile kept walking from the room, Luffy lunged at the bars again, causing them to bend more. Vivi nay, Luffy shouted. Get us out of here. Everyone looked at the little girl, who was shaking in rage. Luffy, Usopp said. Lu, Ace said. Haha, begging for your life, Straw Hat Brat. Crocodile laughed. Of course you are. Everyone fears death. Luffy-chan, Vivi said as she stared at the girl. If we die here, Luffy shouted, her eyes flashing. Then who's gonna kick his ass? Crocodile, who had turned his back, froze at this. He turned to look at the 12-year-old with a dark look. Don't be so full of yourself, fish bait. Luffy looked right back at him, with no trace of fear as she said. You're the one who's a minnow. Crocodile looked downright murderous, but instead he snapped his fingers once more, causing a trapdoor to open in front of him. Nearly everyone watched in horror as a banana gator heaved its way into the room. Though not as large as the Lord Tiger back on Dawn, it was still large enough to stare down at Vivi as it growled in hunger. Though it did stop when Luffy growled a warning, the gator looked surprised and slightly scared when it felt a dangerous presence coming from the small human inside its master's cage. The gator wanted to run from the angered presence, but after hearing a snap from its master, the gator turned its attention from the dangerous creature from the cage to the weak blue-haired human outside the cage. "It's huge," Vivi gasped. Johnny, Yosaku, Usopp, Nami and Nojiko screamed in horror as they saw a line of gators swimming towards the trapdoor. "Vivi nay!" Gracie shouted as the gator lunged for its prey. "Run!" Vivi managed to dodge the gator, but the stairs weren't so lucky. The gator's jaw broke through them like nothing. "Vivi!" Most of the crew shouted as the gator's tail smashed into Vivi, sending the princess across the room. But as it closed in on her, a loud ringing sound cut through the air. "Incoming call," Miss All Sunday said as she pulled out a Den Mushi. "Yes. Hello." Luffy's eyes widened as she recognized the voice. "Can you hear me?" Sanji, thought all the Straw Hats as Luffy, for the first time since being in this cage, smiled. "Yes, we can hear you," Miss All Sunday said. "This is the Millions, right? Glad I could get through. I've never used a baby transponder before," said Sanji as another voice told him he was using it correctly. Luffy's smile grew wider as she recognized the second voice as Jin's. "What is it?" Crocodile demanded. "Hurry up and state your business." That voice, I've heard that voice before. This is Restaurant Le Crab." "Restaurant Le Crab?" Crocodile asked. "So you do remember. I thought I had all of the Straw Hats in the cage." Crocodile thought. "You mean there's more?" "Hey, did you hear that?" Usopp asked. "Restaurant Le Crab," Nami repeated. "Wait," Johnny said. "That sounds lick." Yosaku never got to finish as he was cut off by Luffy, who shushed them. "Do you know this person Lu?" Ace asked, wondering just how many people were on his sister's crew. A toothy grin was all he got. "That's right," Vivi thought. "Sanji, Jin and Chopper are still out there." "Who is this?" Crocodile demanded. "Just call me, Mr. Prince. Prince Ni. Help us," Luffy shouted, along with some others. "Sounds like you have my little sister and some of my crew with you," Sanji said. A tick mark appeared on Ace's forehead. Thatch couldn't stop from smiling. "Here comes Ace's sister complex." "Little pissant," Crocodile said. "Where are you?" "Can't tell you that. You'd kill me," Sanji said, before a gunshot was heard on his end. "Be bastard," said another voice. "This is the Millions. We killed that Mr. Prince bastard." "Sanji," Usopp screamed. "Brother Cook." Johnny and Yosaku yelled in horror. "That idiot had to get caught," Zoro said in frustration. "It's over," Nami said with tears in her eyes. But Thatch and Ace were focused on Luffy, who was smiling. "Where are you?" Crocodile asked. "We're outside Rain Dinners." Crocodile smirked as he left with Miss All Sunday to take care of them. As soon as they left, the gator went for Vivi again, but she managed to dodge. "Vivi nay," Luffy shouted. "Go find Sanji Ni and Jin Ni." "But," Johnny said, "Sanji Ni's not dead, neither is Jin Ni," Luffy said. Vivi stared at the girl for a moment, before she nodded. "I'll be back," she shouted as the gator went for her again. Thankfully, it missed, but the impact caused the windows to crack, letting more water in. "Craap!" Usopp yelled out. "The water's pouring in now. We've probably got about 20 minutes left." He continued to shout hysterically before Alvida smacked him with her mace. "Stop shouting already," she growled, angry that he was making too much noise. "You've got a very interesting crew, Lu," Ace said as he watched them. Luffy smiled, her hands over her ears. End chapter. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Dragon Queen by TurboDragonQueen. Chapter 19: Dragon vs. the Sandman. It had been about 5 minutes or so since Vivi left to find Sanji and Jin. The water was rising pretty quickly, already coming up to their knees, much to the annoyance of the 3 fruit users inside the cage. Alvida was leaning against Nojiko, while Thatch supported Ace. Smoker was the only fruit user unaffected as he sat on the ledge that was at the back of the cage. Luffy stood near Zoro, hands over her ears, as some of her crew started shouting. "Come and get me, you stupid croc," Nami shouted. "What are you doing?" Usopp shouted. "I'm getting that croc to bite down and break this cage." Most of them liked this idea and started shouting insults until it bit down on the cage. Unfortunately, the gator cried out in pain when its teeth broke. "Hey," Zoro said to Thatch and Ace. "Can't you break this cage?" Thatch shook his head. "I can't do anything when Pretty Boy here is down." "Thatch, I'm going to kill you," Ace said, trying to fight off the draining effect of the water. "And I don't have a transponder, so I can't contact Oyaji." "Hey," Smoker said in a calm voice. "All of you, how in the world are you so calm?" Usopp yelled. Luffy pressed down on her ears again. She was getting a headache from all the shouting around her, which wasn't helping her at all. "What do you know of Crocodile's plans?" he asked. "That woman with him has been wanted by the world government for 20 years. Her bounty exceeds 70 million. 70 million, Usopp shrieked. "It's more than that," Johnny said as he and Yosaku pulled out a wanted poster. "Her bounty is 79 million to be exact," Yosaku said, as they all stared at a picture of an 8-year-old Miss All Sunday, or Nico Robin. Luffy frowned when she saw the picture. Just like in the poster, Luffy could see all the pain and loneliness in the woman's eyes. The look that someone had when they were repeatedly told that they didn't deserve to live. The same look that Ace once had. "What is it, Lou?" Ace asked in a quiet voice, as he noticed the frown. "She reminds me of you, Ace Nee," Luffy said. Ace looked at the picture, his eyes widened in understanding. "Where'd you get that?" Alvida asked, not noticing the conversation between their captain and her brother. "We've kept all the posters we had before," Yosaku answered. "We still collect them, just in case we run into them." Johnny said. "That's her," Smoker said. "What does that have to do with anything?" Luffy asked, feeling defensive of the woman. With those two working together, this could end up being a catastrophe that will engulf the world. "The world?" Nojiko asked in shock. "You mean the world's gonna end?" Johnny and Yosaku yelled. Luffy flinched. "Quit yelling," Nami shouted. "That doesn't matter," Luffy said. "I'm still going to beat up Crocodile." "Luffy," Ace said, struggling to stand. "There is no way I'm letting you fight a warlord. Sabo and Law would kill me. Not to mention Shanks and that damn geezer." Luffy crossed her arms and stared defiantly at her brother. "Your brother's right, kid," Thatch said. "You're going to get yourself killed." "I don't care," she growled. He threatened Vivi Ne and Toto Jii. "Besides, Ace Nee knows he can't stop me. It's quite rude to be so rowdy at the table when you're eating," said a voice from the door. Everyone turned to see the gator go skyward into the air, courtesy of Sanji. "Anti-manner kick course," Sanji yelled. The gator landed in the water as he turned to everyone in the cage. Jin walked in with Vivi. "Been waiting long." Sanji Nee, Jin Nee, Luffy and Gracie cheered. "Brother Prince is here to save us." Johnny and Yosaku yelled, dancing around in a circle. "Get the key to the cage." Zoro shouted. Nami Swan, Alvida Kwan, Nojiko Swan, "Do you ladies love me?" Sanji yelled out as he danced around like a noodle with hearts in his eyes. Ace's left eye twitched at this. "My sister's got a pervert in her crew." "Yes," said the women in a monotone. "We love you. Now get that stupid key." "Good job, Vivi Ne," Luffy said, giving the woman a thumbs up. Vivi smiled, returning the gesture as more banana gators heaved themselves into the room. "More ill-mannered reptiles," Sanji said as he raised his leg into the air. Jin pulled out his tonfa. "You shitty bananas need to learn not to attack a lady." Ace's eye twitched again. Out of all the crew members he's seen so far, the perverted blonde curly brow is the one he needs to keep his eyes on, so he doesn't dirty his precious little sister. Zoro had to hold back a laugh when he saw Luffy's brother giving curly brow a look that promised death upon the perverted cook. "Hurry up and kick their asses already," Usopp shouted, only to receive another mace to the head. "No swearing in front of Luffy-chan and Gracie-chan," Alvida said in a dark tone. "Take out the third one that just entered the room," Smoker said. Luffy looked at Smoker, before listening to the growls of the gators. "The third one?" Gracie asked. "Why that one?" Alvida asked. "It's the one that swallowed the key," Luffy said. "Am I right, Smokey?" "That's right," Smoker said, deciding to ignore the nickname given to him by the child. Everyone else stared at the gators as none could tell the difference, but Sanji sent it flying anyway. Sure enough, the gator coughed up the key, as well as a giant white ball. "What is that thing?" Thatch asked. Gracie's eyes widened when she saw the ball. "Is that?" "Yup," Luffy said as she caught the familiar scent of wax. "Wax, wax, ball, open," came a withered voice from inside the ball. Everyone save Gracie and Luffy were shocked to see a dried up Mr. 3 pop up out of the ball. "Wadu. It's a mythical. I'm Dave," he said as they all gaped at him. "It's the wax man," Alvida said. "Mr. 3, Vivi asked, "What were you doing inside that gator?" But Mr. 3 paid no mind to the questions, he was more focused on the water at his feet. Gracie hid behind Nami as Mr. 3 started drinking the water like a madman. "Pa, I'm revived," he shouted as he plumped back up. "Just before I got swallowed he shouted when he caught sight of Luffy. "You're the brat from Little Garden." Then he stopped as he took in everything. A flooding room, a steel cage and a key. He thought as he grinned. "So that's what's going on," he said as they snatched the key that was on his wax ball. "Give us the key right now," Sanji said as he took a step towards him, followed by Jin. "Okay," he said with a toothy grin, before he chucked the key into the middle of a large group of gators. "Line break. I'm Sowie. Hera YWOUGWO," said a bloodied Mr. 3 after using his powers to unlock the cage. "Thank you, crappy wax man," Sanji said, before he kicked the man across the room. "Alright, let's go. Crocodile will be here any moment," Usopp said as they all got out of the cage. Luffy all but cheered when she was no longer trapped. "We can get out the same way as Crocodile," Nojiko said. "But the passageway is filled with banana gators," Vivi exclaimed. "We don't need to worry about that," Thatch said as he dragged Ace out. "Huh, take that bananas," Luffy yelled as she and Zoro stood in front of a pile of beaten gators. "Way to go, lil sis, big bro," Johnny and Yosaku said in unison. "I couldn't even handle one of them," Vivi whimpered. "Don't worry about it," Usopp said. But then to everyone's horror, the wall cracked and the whole room was flooded with water. Everyone screamed as they were engulfed with water. Line break. Everyone surfaced from the water around rain dinners one by one. Ace and Alvida were dragged up by Thatch and Nojiko. Luffy stayed underwater just long enough to make sure that everyone had made it up okay. She followed after Zoro, who she had ordered to save Smoker. "Why'd you save him?" Sanji said as Zoro pulled Smoker up. "Shut it, Cook." Zoro snapped. "I wanted to leave him there." "Aw, forget it," Sanji said. "Vivi Kwan, can we still make it?" "I don't know," she answered as Thatch helped Ace up. "Nami Swan, do you still have the perfume from earlier?" "Yes." "Why?" "Spray some on." Nami looked confused but did it anyway. Luffy wrinkled her nose at the smell. It wasn't that it didn't smell good, it's just that Nami had a tendency to put on more than needed. "Roronoa," Smoker yelled as he swung his jute towards him, but Zoro quickly blocked it. "Why did you save me?" "I didn't want to," Zoro said simply. "It was Captain's orders. I'd have let you drown." Smoker turned to look at Luffy, who was giving him a big grin. "I couldn't let you drown," she said. "No fruit user deserves to sink like an anchor. Is this child for real?" Smoker thought, before he sighed. "Go." Everyone looked at the Marine captain, confusion on their faces. "I'm letting you go this one time. But the next time you're all dead." "You heard him, let's go," Nojiko said as everyone, save Zoro, Ace, Thatch and Luffy ran. "I knew you were a good guy, Smokey Knee," Luffy said laughing. Smoker was taken back by the girl's words. Thatch laughed as his face went red. "Get out of my sight." Smoker roared, still red in the face. "Don't touch my sister," Ace yelled as he was dragged away by Thatch. "Shishishi." Luffy laughed as she followed her friends. Line break. Pretty soon after they left rain dinner, Luffy and her companions had located Chopper and Kaya, who were riding a giant crab. "All right," Chopper said after they all got on. "Let's go." "Luffy, I do expect an explanation when this is all over," Ace said. Luffy nodded before she sensed something from behind them. Knowing who it was, she quickly knocked her brother and his friend out, knowing that if she didn't, her brother's overprotective streak would kick in. She'd deal with his yelling later. "Why'd you do that?" Usopp asked. "Ah." Everyone spun to see Vivi being pulled away by a big golden hook. "Chopper, stop the crab," Zoro shouted. "Vivi, nay," Luffy shouted. Before anyone could stop her, Luffy had stretched her arm to grab Vivi. Everyone watched in horror as their young captain switched places with the desert princess, throwing Vivi to Zoro. "Luffy," they all shouted. "I'll be fine," Luffy shouted. "Get Vivi to Alubarna. Promise me." Everyone was looking at the girl with mixtures of shock and horror. Zoro stared at the child, before he sighed. "Her family is going to kill us. Crazy brat," he said before telling Chopper to keep going. "You can't be serious." Nami yelled as everyone else began to protest as well. "We have to go back for Luffy-chan." Vivi yelled. "We don't have a choice." Zoro said. "Luffy gave us an order. To get you to Alubarna." Vivi's eyes widened at that. No one else was looking too happy at the thought of a 12-year-old taking on a warlord. "Just be careful, Luffy-chan," Alvida yelled out. "Luffy, we'll wait for you in Alubarna." Vivi shouted. "Yeah," Luffy yelled back, before she flipped to land on her feet. "Looks like the princess got away," Robin said. "No matter. The agents are in place in Alubarna," Crocodile said as he glared down at the child. "I'd say you taking this nonsense little too far, child." "I don't care," Luffy said as she removed her desert clothing. Soon she stood in front of Crocodile, wearing a red t-shirt and blue shorts, her straw hat on her head. Vivi Nay doesn't think it nonsense, and neither do I. Unlike most people, Vivi Nay truly cares about others. And I know that as long as you're around, Viv Nay will fight to protect her country until she either wins or dies trying. And since I don't want my big sister to die, I'm going to kick your ass all over this desert." "Foolish child," Crocodile said with a smirk. "Despite what the princess thinks, there's always one constant truth. During battle you either kill or die. And I will gladly put a bullet through every heart I meet." Luffy only smirked. "If that's what you think," she said, "then you're a bigger fool than I thought." Robin couldn't stop from chuckling at the girl's comment, causing the now angry Crocodile to glare at her. "You think this is amusing?" he said in a dark tone. "Would you like to die with the child as well, Nico Robin?" Robin looked at Luffy again, before she began to walk away. "Kill me if you wish. But you did agree to not call me by that name." "Where are you going?" he asked. "To Alubarna," she said before she left. "I will never understand that woman," Crocodile said, as he pulled out a tiny hourglass and threw it at Luffy's feet. 3 minutes, that's all the time I'm giving you, child," he said. "After that, I will not have time to play with you anymore." The wind blew past them as Luffy glared at Crocodile. "Any problem with that, child?" "Nope," Luffy said, before she lunged for him. Gum Gum pistol. But the punch missed as Crocodile turned himself into sand. Luffy ducked as he attempted to take off her head with his hook. "Gum Gum stamp," she yelled, but her foot only went through him. No matter how many of her normal attacks she threw at him, they just went through him. Luffy growled, her eyes flashing as she raised her hand again. Listen here child, your attacks are like mosquito bites, Crocodile bragged. It doesn't matter how long you continue. A child like you. He never got to finish as Luffy aimed her fist at his head. Gum gum pistol, she yelled. Before Crocodile knew what had happened, he found himself flying as her fist slammed into his face. He landed rather harshly on his back. That brat hit me. How? Crocodile thought as he glared at Luffy, only for his eyes to widen as he saw her hand. Just before her punch connected, Luffy had covered her fist with scales, allowing her to hit him. What the hell is that? Crocodile thought as he got to his feet. You're no ordinary rookie. And it looks like you're not as unbeatable as you claim, Sandy. Luffy said with a grin that showed her canines. Crocodile just glared at the child, as a vein stood out on his forehead. Don't get cocky brat, he growled. I may not know what you are, but it'll take more than fancy tricks to defeat me. He raised his hand and Luffy watched as it turned into a blade of sand. I will teach you to not mess with me, child. Desert Spada. A giant wave of sand headed straight towards Luffy. Instinct screaming, Luffy dove to the side, just missing the attack. When she looked back, there was a deep scar in the sand. I'm impressed you managed to dodge that. Crocodile complimented. Luffy stared down at the newly made ravine. It was like Uncle Hockey's blade cutting through that ship. Desert Girasole. Crocodile yelled as he slammed his hand into the sand. Luffy yelped in surprise when she was suddenly engulfed by a giant hole. Never heard of quicksand, brat. Crocodile mused as the girl fell. The sand is being drawn into an underground re. He all but chalked on his words when wings appeared on the child's back. It'll take more than that to bury me, Sandy. Luffy yelled as she flew at him. What the hell is this child? Crocodile thought as he step-sided the attack she threw at him, causing Luffy to bury herself in the sand. When she dug herself out, her wings had vanished. She looked up, only to find Crocodile standing in front of her. What the hell are you? Crocodile demanded. Sorry, Sandy, Luffy said as she lunged for him again. But I don't blab out secrets like you do. Crocodile growled as he grabbed the girl's arm. Hey, let go, she yelled. Barchin, Crocodile said as he slashed at the girl's arm. Luffy hit him in the gut with a scaled-covered foot, forcing him to let her go. She jumped away from him, before she started screaming in pain as her arm seemed to shrivel up. When she looked, the arm that he had slashed looked completely mummified. What did you do to my arm, Sandy? I sucked all of the water out of your arm. Crocodile said with a sadistic grin. Maybe I should use my sand to suck all the water from your body and dry you to death. Luffy stared at the man, with a wary expression, trying to ignore both the pain in her arm and her need to shift. Then an idea popped into her head. She ran over to where she had placed her things. She quickly grabbed the small barrel of water that Toto had given her. She took a quick drink and was delighted when her arm returned to normal. Ha, it worked, she said, before turning to Crocodile again. Worthless. It's not worthless. Luffy growled when he said that. Toto G gave me this water in Yuba after he spent all night digging for it. You know that old man. Yuba will never be defeated by mere sand. To further her anger, Crocodile began to laugh. What's so funny? Luffy demanded. Sables. Crocodile said as he created a sandstorm in his hand. What are you doing? Luffy cried as she shielded her eyes from the sand. Time's up, brat. Crocodile said as the storm grew at an alarming rate. Time for you to die, along with Yuba. This sand is nice and dry today, Crocodile said. Now then child, the prevailing winds here always blow to the south. If this small sandstorm rides that wind south and matures, where do you think it will strike when it's nice and big? The south, Luffy repeated, before her eyes widened. He wouldn't, she thought as her anger grew. Yuba, Crocodile said with a big grin. Why? She roared as she charged him, but was thrown back by the winds. Toto G has nothing to do with this. Give it up child, Crocodile advised as he looked at the storm he created. Once this storm picks up speed, not even I will be able to stop it. Stop it, Luffy screamed. Yuba is finished, Crocodile said with a serene smile that pissed the young girl further. Stop it, she shouted again as she managed to grab his coat. Stop it Ryurk. Crocodile grinned as he hoisted up the child he had just impaled in the chest with his hook. Who do you think I am? He asked in a low voice as blood dripped from his hook. While I commend you on your strength, you are just talk child, like the many other rookies that sail along the Grand Line. While he talked, the sandstorm began to make its way to the south. Yuba will die from this final sandstorm and the flame of the rebel army's hatred shall burn anew. The archaic concern for others will destroy this country. And the same goes for you child, had you ignored those worthless feelings, you would have lived longer. Crocodile's attention was then drawn to the small barrel of water that Luffy had placed around her neck. The water trickled down his arm to drip on the sand below. Water. I suppose that this water will no longer be of any import. Crocodile didn't get to finish as Luffy's hand shot up to grip his arm. He cried in pain when she dug her nails into his arm. Impossible. You're still alive, he said in shock, as the impaled girl started to move. Luffy coughed out blood as she glared at him with golden eyes. Crocodile growled, before he tossed the girl into the sinkhole that he'd created earlier. Luffy cried out in pain when sand touched her wound, struggling against the sinking sand. You seem to be in quite some pain. Crocodile said smugly. But soon you'll be in peace. Luffy struggled harder to get out of the quicksand, but her mind was clouded in pain and she no longer had the strength to escape or in the right mind to shift. Goodbye, Crocodile said as he walked away, leaving the young child to her sandy grave. Damn it, Luffy thought, as she started to black out. But then, just as she was about to sink into the sand, a dozen of arms appeared from the surrounding sand and lifted out of the hole to be placed onto the safety of the desert's sand. Luffy forced herself to stay awake as her healing factor worked overtime to heal her wounds. She looked over to see Robin standing over her, watching her in interest. Thank you, Luffy managed to say. Why do you fight? Robin asked. As the ones who carry the initial D. Luffy asked in confusion. It seems I shouldn't have as. Robin was cut off, when a blue flaming bird landed in between her and Luffy. Line break. Where the hell are they, Yoi? Marco thought as he flew over Rainbase, trying to locate Ace and Thatch. It had been some time since the two had last contacted Oyaji, and Marco was getting worried. Though to his annoyance, he found out that the two idiots had forgotten to grab a transponder before Thatch dragged Ace away. It didn't help when he had to avoid a sandstorm that appeared from nowhere. On top of that, Marco thought, we still haven't found Ace's cyst. Marco didn't get to finish that thought, when he spotted the missing child being pulled out from what looked like a sinkhole by many arms. He watched as the arms lifted Ace's sister from the hole and placed her beside a black-haired woman, who he recognized as Nico Robin. His growing worry for Ace's sister doubled when he saw the state of the girl. The young girl was drenched in blood and she appeared to be shaking. Marco's worry turned to anger as he dove down to place himself in between Ace's sister and Nico Robin. Stay away from the child, Marco said after he changed back to human. Nico Robin's eyes widened in shock at the sudden appearance of Whitebeard's first commander. Before anything else could be said or done, they heard the child behind Marco speak. Wait, Ni-chan. Marco turned to the child, alarmed at the amount of blood that soaked the girl's clothes. You should not be moving, Yoi. He said as he tried to stop her when she tried to move. His eyes widened when he caught sight of the hole in her chest. What happened, Yoi? He said in panic. I'll be fine, Luffy said, before she winced in pain as she sat up. She looked over the shoulder of the panicking Phoenix to stare at Robin. Thank you again for saving me, Nei-chan. Robin's eyes widened for a split second, before going back to being calm. Found you. The three turned to see a pale-looking man in desert clothing and wearing a turban limping towards them. The man was using his sword as a walking stick. Where is Princess Vivi? The man demanded. Oh my, awake already. Robin mused, as she used her powers to throw Luffy's hat towards her. I will not be caught off guard again. The man said, preparing to draw his sword. Don't stain yourself. You're hurt more than you think. Robin said, tossing the hat to Marco. The man ignored her. Your princess is perfectly healthy. She is currently heading towards Alubarna as we speak. Robin said as she walked over to her desert croc. With that she left, leaving the man to fall to his feet in frustration. Who are you, mister? Luffy asked the man as she moved to stand. My name is Pell. I am one of Princess Vivi's guards. Marco was about ready to pull out his hair. Sit back down, Yoi. He said, ignoring the glare he received from the stubborn child. I'm fine, she said. You have a hole in your chest. You are not fine, Yoi. Marco snapped. She's as stubborn as her brother. I'm fine, she said again. It's healing. Sure enough, when Marco looked at the wound again, it seemed smaller than before. He sighed, feeling a headache coming on. He looked at Pell and Luffy, crossing his arms. Now would you be so kind as to tell me what's going on, Yoi? Line break. After she had told both Pell and her brother's friend, Marco, what was happening, the two were more than eager to help. Though Marco was against Luffy going to Alubarna to face Crocodile again, which was understandable seeing as he had wounded her. Marco wasn't so sure that Crocodile would live if Ace found out that his sister had been injured. Heck, he wasn't sure if he could stop himself from killing the man. After bandaging her wounds and Pell's, Marco had left to go tell Whitebeard of the situation. While Pell offered to take the child to Alubarna, Luffy was ecstatic when he changed into a falcon thanks to his devil fruit. Pell was quite surprised when the child had asked him if he could teach her to fly later. He had been further shocked when she revealed that she was a dragon. Wow, look how high we are. Luffy yelled happily as she rode on Pell's back, as he flew through the air. Are you sure you're okay? Pell asked the girl on his back. You were near death just mere hours ago. I'll be okay, Luffy said as she fingered the bandages that covered her wound. Thanks to her healing factor, the wound wasn't as bad as it was before. But she knew it'd take more time to heal. Pell didn't look convinced. Even if you're an ancient, you should not take such wounds so lightly. You were lucky that Crocodile missed your heart. I'll be fine, Luffy said again, getting a little tired of people asking her if she was fine. Pell sighed. I guess I'm not one to talk, since I was also badly hurt by that woman. If not for my ability, she would have broken my spine and neck. You can heal quickly too. We devil fruit users have a higher endurance and healing capabilities than most people. Pell stated. It's why we can take a beating and stand back up, even when greatly injured. Luffy said nothing as she thought back to the times where her body healed faster after she'd been injured. She knew that she healed faster than most because of what she was, but she never realized that her healing factor was enhanced by being a fruit user as well. There's a Lubarna, Pell said, gaining the girl's attention. Luffy looked down to see a huge city that was built in a circle surrounded by tall stone walls. Even from this height, Luffy could hear the sound of gunfire. But their vision was obscured by sand. Where's Vivi Nay? Luffy asked. I can't see anything even with my sight, can you? No, Pell said, worry in his tone. But this isn't an ordinary sandstorm. Luffy growled when she realized what Pell was talking about. We need to find Sandy and Vivi Nay now. Just then Luffy caught a flash of blue out of the corner of her eyes. Pell Ni, Luffy cried as she pointed to where she saw Vivi. Pell looked to where the child was pointing and dived towards the palace, both hoping they'd make it in time. Line break. Vivi, yelled King Cobra. Run, you have to get away from him. No, Vivi said as she glared at Crocodile. There's still time. If I can stop the bomb from detonating, I can still save them. Crocodile growled in annoyance as he grabbed her by the throat and lifted her into the air. Soon Vivi found herself being held over the edge of the palace walls. Below her a sheer drop. If I do this, if I do that, I grow tired of your idealism. Without power those dreams and ideas mean nothing. Crocodile said, I'm amazed that you able to spy on us for 2 years, I'll give you that. But all you've done is condemn your people to death. Face it, princess, he said with a smirk. You can't save anyone. I don't care, Vivi yelled in defiance. As the princess of this kingdom, I won't give up. Then you can die with this kingdom. Crocodile said before turning his hand into sand, allowing the princess to fall to her death. Vivi, Cobra shouted terrified for his daughter. Crocodile began to laugh at the falling princess before something caught in the sky caught his eye. He studied it for a moment before his eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible, Crocodile, Luffy roared as she and Pell flew down towards them. Luffy-chan, Vivi cried out in joy as they swooped down and snatched her before she hit the ground. Are you okay, Vivi Nay? Luffy asked, but then froze when the scent of tears reached her nose. Luffy-chan, Pell, Vivi said as tears ran down her face. We don't have much time. A bomb is going to go off in the square, my voice, no one can hear it, this country, is falling apart. Luffy wrapped her arms around Vivi. Don't worry Vivi Nay, Luffy said gently. I hear you. Vivi stared at the little girl she saw as a sister in shock, before she hugged her back, as Pell landed on the ground. Luffy glared up at Crocodile, her golden eyes flashing. Be careful Luffy-chan, Pell said. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Luffy said as she continued to stare up at Crocodile. Luffy looked behind her to see her crew running up to her. She's alive, Usopp cried out in joy, before crying in pain when Nami, who had been carried by Zoro, whacked him upside the head with her staff. What is wrong with you? I asked for a weapon, not a party favor. I thought you said you couldn't stand. Zoro yelled. What happened to Nami and Nojiko, Moss head? Sanji yelled. Shut up, they're alive, so deal with it. Sorry guys, Luffy said, as everyone looked to their captain. I lost last time, but this time, I'll win. The rest is up to you. Everyone smiled at the girl they called captain. Then get going, Zoro said. Time to end this. Yeah, her crew yelled. Thank you, everyone, Vivi said as she wiped her tears. Luffy just smiled, before she rocketed up to Crocodile. She threw a punch, but missed when he turned to sand, leaving the girl to land on the grassy field of the palace. I'm amazed you managed to survive that quicksand, along with the wound I gave you. Crocodile said. But I'm afraid that your luck has run out child. I'm gonna suck all the water from you until not even a husk remains. Not this time Sandy, Luffy growled. This time I'm going to kick your ass. Line break. Luffy stood protectively in front of Nico Robin, who had almost been killed by Crocodile, her entire frame shaking. Leave Robin Nay alone, Luffy growled, not noticing Robin's eyes widened when she said big sister. Luffy paid no mind, instead she was focusing on protecting the woman who held the same look Ace once had. When this was all over, Luffy was planning on recruiting Nico Robin so she could hopefully get rid of the look of loneliness. That is, if the woman didn't disappear first. Crocodile stared at the child with a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. He could have sworn that she'd been crushed underneath a huge pile of rubble. He still didn't know how she survived the quicksand, but she was really proving to be a thorn in his side. You seem to have a death wish, brat. I've beaten you twice already, you must realize that there's no way you can beat me. I don't care how strong you are, Luffy growled as she held back her other half, she would be able to fight if she shifted into her full dragon form. I don't care if you're a king, warlord or a god. I'm gonna kick your ass for hurting my friends. Luffy turned to glance up at Robin. Can you take Vivi Nay's dad and go outside, Robin Nay? I'll hold off Sandy here. Robin hesitated, before nodding and running over to help the wounded king. As they went for the exit, Robin sent out a silent prayer that the 12-year-old little girl who had just saved her life and called her big sister, was going to be okay if she was going to be left alone with a man who could be considered a monster. When Luffy was sure that the two were safe, she turned back to Crocodile, who removed a piece of his hook. Underneath was another hook with large holes. Luffy caught the scent of poison. "I think it's time that I've dealt with you properly, child," Crocodile said as he raised his weapon. "You will regret having ever gone against me." "I think that's the other way around, Sandy," Luffy said. They lunged at each other. Line break. Zoro, Sanji, Jin, Usopp, Johnny, Yosaku, Gracie, Alvida, Nami, Nojiko, Kaya, Chopper, Cobra stood waiting outside of the tomb, wanting to help, but none were in the condition to do so. They all turned when they heard voices coming from behind them. They were very surprised and slightly scared to see nearly all of the Whitebeard commanders, including Luffy's brother, Thatch, and Marco. With them was Whitebeard, who towered over everyone present. "Please tell me my little sister is not fighting a warlord alone," Ace said, as he looked around for his sister. All the Straw Hats looked at each other, before looking back at Ace, who paled. "Luffy," Ace yelled as he sprinted towards the entrance of the tomb, injuries be damned. He wasn't about to let some jerk of a warlord kill his reckless sister. He was only about a foot from it when the ground began to shake. Everyone was knocked off their feet as Luffy and Crocodile came flying out of the ground. Crocodile was covered in blood and bruises, while Luffy was in her partial form, just as injured and exhausted. "Gum gum," Luffy shouted as she threw back her dragon claws. "Die," Crocodile roared. "Desert, Dragon Storm, La Spada." Everyone watched in awe as Luffy's claws seemed to multiply, smashing through the giant sand axes made from Crocodile's attack. Crocodile could do nothing as he was being plummeted with hundreds of dragon's claws at once. Crocodile was sent flying, unconscious, into the middle of the still raging battle in the plaza. "She did it," Vivi said. The Straw Hats began to cheer, only to stop when their 12-year-old captain dropped like stone, her dragon features vanishing. Thankfully Ace managed to catch his sister just before she hit the ground. Ace couldn't help but smile when he saw that she was asleep, exhausted from her battles. "What am I going to do with you, Lu?" From the sky above, the rain began to fall. End chapter.